Chapter 24, Kingdom Fungi. Perhaps the first word that comes to mind when you think of a fungus is a mushroom. In fact, fungus is the Latin word for mushroom, but this also includes molds and single-celled yeast. Mushrooms are merely the reproductive bodies of each species. The actual organism is even more bizarre. Fungi are a eukaryotic taxonomic kingdom with true monophyletic lineage with over 100,000 identified species, and many more yet to be discovered. This kingdom contains edible mushrooms, yeast, black mold, and Penicillium notatum, the species most famously responsible for producing the antibiotic penicillin. Historically, fungi were placed in the plant kingdom, and it's easy to see why. They are stalk-like, they seem to have a root system, and they grow out of the ground similar to plants. But they're actually much more closely related to animals, making them part of the same supergroup, Opisthokonta. Fungi are not photosynthetic, but are heterotrophic, and they share the following features with animals. Animals and fungi both store glucose as glycogen. Both contain unicellular 9+2 microtubules that make flagella, although only one group of fungi have flagellated cells. Fungi and animals both produce melanin, a dark pigment found in fungal cells and in the skin of animals. And finally, fungal cell walls and arthropod exoskeletons both produce chitin. No other groups of eukaryotes do these features. Fungi can reproduce asexually or sexually using an extravagant life cycles as seen in protists and plants. Fungi encompass a variety of lifestyles. Many are decomposers, like bacteria, returning organic nutrients back to the soil. Some fungi have mutualistic relationships with plant roots that help the plants absorb nutrients while plants provide sugars to the fungi. These fungi are collectively called mycorrhizae. And some fungi are parasitic, causing devastating diseases in plants like chestnut blight, which wiped out a dominant tree species up to the early 20th century from North American forests. They also cause corn smut and wheat rust, devastating crops. Yeast infections, athlete's foot, and histoplasmosis are some parasitic fungal diseases in humans. Still, some fungi are important in the production of cheese, beer, and wine, and soy sauce, as well as some commercial antibiotics and enzymes. Historically, scientists placed fungi into the plant kingdom because they superficially look like them, rooting themselves into the grounds, having stalks, and staying in place. While there's no debate that fungi are definitely not plants anymore, there is still debate over whether the entire fungi kingdom is monophyletic or polyphyletic. But most fungi scientists lean towards monophyletic. Regardless, fungi have existed for at least 450 million years. Fungi, like protists, plants, and animals, are composed of eukaryotic cells that contain nuclei and DNA wrapped around histone proteins to form linear chromosomes. Fungi have mitochondria and other membrane-bound organelles, but lack chloroplast and chlorophyll. Fungi do have varying pigments used to protect UV radiation, which can lead to some brightly colored organisms. In fact, what you're seeing here is the inspiration for the mushrooms used to make Mario grow in Super Mario Bros. Also, this same species, the fly agaric mushroom, was featured in Alice in Wonderland, where they made Alice grow and shrink. That's because, purportedly, this species gives you the hallucinogen of growing whenever you eat it. Fungi have cell walls like plants, but their cell walls are not made of cellulose, but by chitin. Strangely enough, arthropods, such as insects and crustaceans, also produce chitin in their exoskeletons, which is one line of ancestry between fungi and animals. These cell walls protect the fungus from drying out and from being eaten by some predators. The cell membranes are similar to other eukaryotes, only they have ergosterol in place of cholesterol. While most fungi are immotile, one group retained a flagella and solely use it to move its spores to the appropriate location. Unicellular fungi are called yeast, such as Saccharomyces cerevisiae, which is responsible for beer, bread, and wine production, while multicellular fungi produce thread-like hyphae. Some fungi can switch between being single or multicellular. Multicellular fungi display both a vegetative and reproductive morphological stage. A massive hyphae is called a mycelium and can grow on many surfaces and is visible to the naked eye. In fact, the largest organism on the planet is a single honey mushroom, which has a network of mycelia in the soil spanning 2,000 acres in eastern Oregon. And it's thought to be over 2,400 years old. Now, not a massive mushroom by its size, but every little mushroom that pops up is all shared by the same network of mycelia. Most fungal hyphae are divided into separate cells called septa. The thin nature of hyphae allows for easy absorption by diffusion and osmosis to various nutrients received from its food source. Some fungi have choanocytic hyphae, which are not divided cells but a large multinucleate cell. Fungi do best in moist and slightly acidic environments, but their oxygen needs vary per species. Most fungi are obligate aerobes, just like us, and that they must have oxygen to survive and make ATP. Some fungi, like those that reside in the digestive tracts of mammals, are obligate anaerobes, in that they can't function in the presence of oxygen. Brewer's yeast is an example of a facultative anaerobe, in that it grows best in oxygenated environments but can still undergo cellular respiration without oxygen. This process is called fermentation and is exactly how alcohol in beer and wine production is made, by yeast. Fungi, like animals, are heterotrophs, requiring organic molecules as a source of energy and carbon. Fungi can't retrieve nitrogen from their surroundings like bacteria, but must retrieve it from other living things. So while animals ingest food first and digest it internally using specialized organs, fungi must digest their food first and then absorb it. These fungi require exoenzymes that are secreted by the fungus on its food source, where it breaks down matter and then absorbs the digested mess. This is called external digestion. Some exoenzymes can break down cellulose and lignin in plants to aid in the decomposition of plant cell walls and wood. Both animals and plants store glucose as glycogen. Most fungi are saprobes, meaning they grow on dead or decaying organisms. These decomposers allow molecules locked inside of dead material to be released into the environment to be taken up by other organisms. Fungi have also been investigated for use in bioremediation to help absorb and break down toxic materials in nature. Some fungi are parasitic, using a specialized hyphae called a hostoria to penetrate the tissues of hosts and secrete digestive enzymes and absorb them. Unlike animals, fungi are haploid dominant in that the organism is mostly made of haploid cells, with the zygote being the only diploid part of the life cycle. Fungi reproduce asexually by many ways. Fragmentation, in which a hyphae can break off and form a new colony. Yeast can form buds, in which a portion of the plasma membrane receives a copy of DNA and the bud grows to its own separate individual. And finally, asexual reproduction can occur through the formation of asexual spores. Spores are made from the zygotes that immediately undergo meiosis. In fungi, spores develop into multicellular filaments called hyphae. Male and females don't exist in fungi. Instead, hyphae are deemed positive and negative. Incompatible hyphae are the same type, while a positive and a negative hyphae allow for reproduction. Fungi can undergo asexual reproduction by forming a filamentous stalk called a zygosporophyte, which is capped with a zygospore. The zygospore releases haploid spores, which can make more hyphae. Remember that sexual reproduction introduces genetic variation, and in fungi, it is a response to changing environmental conditions. Sexual reproduction occurs by a positive and negative hyphae cross-linking together. This forms a zygospore, which forms a diploid zygote. The only time a fungus is diploid is at the zygote stage, because immediately the zygote undergoes meiosis to become 4 spores. Typically, sexual reproduction in fungi happens in 3 stages. First is plasmagamy, which happens when 2 haploid cells fuse, making a dikaryotic stage where one cell is made of 2 haploid nuclei. This is designated as N plus N. If you remember, a haploid nucleus is designated N and a diploid is designated 2N. N plus N refers to 2 haploid nuclei that have yet to fuse but share the same cell. Karyogamy occurs where 2 haploid nuclei fuse to form a diploid zygote. And meiosis, where the gametangia, or the structure that makes gametes, this is where the haploid spores are made. In our next video, we're going to look at the major groups of fungi.